Welcome to Liberty Talk Canada. I'm Odessa Orlewicz. I'm really excited to have Jason Lavigne on today. Jason has his own podcast and he's getting really well known on Twitter. And actually, Newsweek picked up a story that he's been trying to get out to all independent media across Canada. And I'm so glad that he is doing that because it's so important that we get updated on what has happened to the four gentlemen who are rotting in jail. Well, it's not called a jail, it's something worse. Jason can tell us the name of it. For about a year and a half with absolutely no trial yet. And they're in jail and they shouldn't be in jail. They should be out on bail. So he's going to tell us the horrific treatment these men are getting as compared to most Canadian citizens that have done much worse. So he's going to update us and you can then go follow his channel to get updates. He also just told me that there's an update with Jeremy Mackenzie's case, not the Jeremy Mackenzie from BC, the one from back east who was accused of, all the Diagolon stuff. So Jason says, and whatever you think of Jeremy Mackenzie, doesn't matter. Some of you love him, some don't. I get that. I don't need mean emails. But it doesn't matter because what has happened with him, I think, getting released and getting off, like Jason said, is so important for Canada. And Jason has high hopes, I think, for the Coutts Four who are rotting in solitary confinement. I just almost started to cry last night when I heard the things that they're saying that they're putting these guys through. So stay tuned to listen about the Coutts Four in Alberta who were protesting at the border. Something different today, aquacure.life, my sponsor. I got an amazing testimonial this weekend. So let me just quickly read that for you. Hi, Odessa. I didn't want to give you a testimonial until we had used this machine for about 3 months. Well, the first 2 weeks, we started to think, okay, I think it's doing something. Then we realized over the past 3 months that this machine is so amazing because now I don't have ankle swelling, I don't have lower back pain, and my jaw pain has gone away. And my husband had terrible tennis elbow and couldn't sleep, and we are not in pain anymore. So I think that is amazing. They did give me permission to say their name, which is Michael and Janet. So thank you, Michael and Janet, for sending me that testimonial about the aquacure.life Brown's gas machine. Anyone else want to send me a testimonial? Please do. Also, the iTerra device, everything that you can look at to do with the health products that I promote, that I believe in, they are in the description. The iTerra device is doing wonders for everybody. I had an insane weekend with Drea Humphrey from Rebel News. She took me up to Whistler with a friend, and we hardly got any sleep. These girls can party a lot more than I can in a very innocent way. So I got home and I'd wish I'd brought my wanded water up there from the iTerra device, but I didn't bother to bring the device. I had to get up this morning after no sleep, and I have been drinking the wanded water, and it has helped me so much to wake up. Or you can just tell me how much you love the show, buy me a coffee, buy me a lunch. If you appreciate the work I'm doing, which is full-time, please, in the description, there's a way that you can help this show so we can get the truth out. So, and thank you, Jason, for coming. Okay, I'm going to bring on Jason because he and Viva Frei, I watched a show they did, and Viva is a lawyer. Jason's a paralegal, not just a podcaster and a person that's been spending so much time on this case. So there was a lot of legality that flew over my head. So I'm so happy I can bring the expert in to inform us what's going on.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you very much for having me. It's going great, and it sounds like I need some of that water. It's been long nights for me as well. It's going to be a long week. I probably need a case of that stuff.
Well, you do shows. What is it? Almost every day, early in the morning.
2 shows a day.
About the Coutts Four.
Well, the first morning show usually is an hour to an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, depending on who we have as guests. But that runs at 6 a.m. Mountain Time, so 5 a.m. for you, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. And that is dedicated to the Coutts Four gentlemen. And we have Granny Mackay on. So she's a liaison for the family, and she knows the lawyers and the men, and she's been talking to them for over a year and a half now. And then we have Donald Best on, who's a retired police officer from Toronto Police Services, who's now become a corruptions investigator, and he really holds the police and authorities to account. And together we bring guests on, like today we had Viva Frei on, and we talk about the law, we talk about the case, and shed light on this situation, because as you just mentioned here at the beginning, very few people knew about this, and this has been going on for 526 days today that these gentlemen have been locked away.
You know, it's interesting because when I saw what you were showing on Twitter, even I said, they're still in the slammer. What's the name of the institute? Because it's apparently worse than the slammer.
Well, it's called the Remand Center. So this is like purgatory in the real world, because you're supposed to just go in there for a bit, find out if you're going to go to trial or go to jail or prison, and then get out. You're supposed to just kind of temporarily be in there. And this is why they don't have like a large gym or facilities, and there's no conjugal visits and stuff like that, because this is just meant to be a temporary place. But not for these gentlemen. They've been there for 526 consecutive days in the remand centers. Now, they do move them around. So one gentleman's up in Medicine Hat, and then he has to come down to Lethbridge for court. Another gentleman's in Calgary, has to come down to Lethbridge. And then 2 gentlemen are in Lethbridge full-time.
So sad. Okay, so before we get into the Coutts Four, because I feel like all this is sort of intermingled, what's happened with Jeremy Mackenzie? Like, was he in jail? Is he out? What's the latest over the last 3 months?
Well, Jeremy's been out. He's on home arrest, and he's had several conditions, including a curfew. But today, 3 hours ago, his lawyers announced, and Rage himself has announced, the charges had now been withdrawn. So he went in on July 19th to continue his court case on this, and he brought up some interesting applications, one for disclosure. So he was requiring the Crown to provide some disclosure. Turns out there wasn't enough to keep this guy on charges. So I'm happy to announce that his lawyer did announce on Twitter that 3 hours ago, the charges have been withdrawn. And if you like, I can go through the conditions that he has and kind of what happened there. Yes,
please, because there's people who are interested in this case as well. We may as well do it all in one show.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So what happened is the charges have been withdrawn, and Jeremy has entered into a common law peace bond, which means he's agreed to do a couple things. And those 2 things are keep the peace and be of good behavior. So he has an excellent record of doing that already. So I suspect he'll continue to. And then do not possess weapons. This is for a year. Again, he has an excellent record of that because they've taken him away for quite some time. So he'll continue to do that for 1 more year. And that's it. After that, Jeremy is done. The seized weapons are still being held for a different trial. Again, I don't think that's going to cause any problems for him, but we'll see where that goes. But these charges have now been withdrawn. And I can also say that the Crown called, there was no evidence for the charges, and careless use was dismissed. So the dismiss was on the careless use of weapons, because there was a video that they were trying to use that they were saying demonstrated that he was intoxicated and holding a weapon. In the end, Jeremy did not admit to anything there. He did not concede to that evidence, and the Crown was unable to provide evidence that he was actually careless. So the charges have been withdrawn. So we're very happy about that.
In your opinion, if this had been a non-freedom fighter and just some guy, Tom, Dick, and Harry, would they have gone after him so hard for some guy with a gun in a video who actually didn't do anything bad with it? Like, if it was not Jeremy Mackenzie, would they have gone so hard on him, do you believe?
Well, Tom, Dick, and Harry would have been shooting gophers and foxes, which is what these weapons were for. These were not dangerous weapons for anybody else. They were not military style. There's nothing. These are legal, registered, not necessarily registered, because some of them are long guns. But Tom, Dick, and Harry would have been just using their weapons and doing what they do with them.
It was that lame, this charge.
Well, we saw with the Public Order Emergency Commission how they were really trying to paint Jeremy, and related to the Coutts, because this is all connected, as this massive organization nationwide trying to tear down the government violently, prepared to do so at any moment, just waiting for one command. But what the government, I guess, didn't realize is the vice president is a time-traveling, cocaine-addicted goat. This is a comedy group. It's always been.
If you guys have no idea what Jason's talking about, because we have some American and European viewers, and South Africa, all that. Sorry if I missed anybody, Australia, New Zealand. Jeremy is the one that had something called Diagolon, which was
Correct.
like a meme joke. Let's quickly tell them what it was. They're hoping for freedom in kind of a diagonal from Canada down to the States. And they had a pretend country just in a funny group of mainly men, some women. And they
No,
called
it's
it
actually more
Diagolon.
benign than that. Yeah, it's more benign than that. They weren't even trying to create a country. Jeremy just recognized that these particular provinces and states had more freedom than the rest. They were the ones that weren't really
Oh, I
doing the
meant a
mandates and
pretend
stuff.
country. I meant a pretend.
Right. But
Yeah.
even when he started that, it wasn't even that far. It was like, oh, look, you kind of see that all the way down from Alaska to Florida, they're freer. And they kind of made a diagonal. And then from that, he goes, oh, well, why don't we make a country? And then that's where the meme came from that. And just to let everybody know, because geographically speaking, you may not know this from around the world, but Jeremy himself wasn't living in that white area. So he didn't even live in that country. He lives on the east coast of Canada. So, this was a meme that was meant to be a joke the entire time.
I know
And the government of Canada.
he's a guy that drinks beer on a podcast and then jokes about, oh, look, you can see the freedom line. Oh, let's call ourselves the Diagolon. And then
Yeah.
it was a big joke that was funny. It was an inside joke and it got way out of hand. And then, yes, our country decided that Diagolon wanted to take the government down and they were going to be violent.
Correct.
It was a bit embarrassing for Canada in the end, wasn't it? Like what they had
Yeah.
said. Yeah.
Well, especially like even with these gun charges, that now makes 0 charges against any member of Diagolon that has stuck in any way, shape, or form. The entire group has had 0 violence charges and any other types of charges, except for Jeremy with these gun charges, and now they're being withdrawn. So at the end of the 2-year witch hunt on Diagolon, we're finding out that they don't even hurt flies.
And the mainstream media, who made a big deal of it before, they will now just not report on that. They're not going to say, oh,
No.
all the charges were dropped. Oh, no big deal. So, they do their hit pieces. And then when it turns around and it shows that, whoops, mistakes were made, this probably wasn't a big deal. Is CBC going to now say, wow, look at the update? Of course they're not. Of course they're not.
No.
And that's
And
why, you're here.
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing on Wikipedia. So you brought to my attention the famous article on the Coutts guys. And if you watch and read that article, they haven't even updated it with the Public Order Emergency Commission outcomes, because the Public Order Emergency Commission showed that Jeremy McKenzie is not a leader of a violent extremist group at all. That's what came out of the POEC. So even that piece of information has not made its way to Wikipedia to update the narrative that's been created there about the Coutts men.
Well, Wikipedia is a lefty hit piece.
Oh,
it's
we know.
It's turned into a lefty rag, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some stuff in there that I'm like, that is so not right. But okay, so these poor guys, tell us their names and their age ranges.
Well, I'm glad you've asked. So we have Jerry Morin. I'm going to have to pull up the ages. I wasn't prepared for that part of it.
Oh, that's okay. You can just guesstimate. Yeah.
They're all in their mid-40s or early 40s.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're all like my age.
And who has children?
So 3 of them have children, and there's 7 children total. So one gentleman has 2, another one has 2, and then one has 3.
Okay. So they're at a protest, Coutts border, and the reason they were thrown in jail, let's start there, is 2 female police said what? You just need to tell us the story here.
Well, I actually have to back up a bit because they were not arrested for conspiracy to commit murder. In fact, it was a very different thing. They were arrested on different charges, and then those got upgraded later to conspiracy to commit murder. So Chris Lysak was walking around Coutts. He was live streaming at the time. I believe it was his Instagram. And he's walking around and he saw some police officers, and he made a comment around the lines of, that's a nice weapon. I'm jealous. Something along those lines. I wish I had one. Something like that. So they immediately arrested him for uttering threats to a police officer for that comment. So he was picked up February 13th at 9 p.m.
He was a legal gun owner in Alberta.
Sure.
So he admired a police officer's gun and said, I wish I had one of those.
Yeah, it was along those lines that he was jealous of it, like he wished he had one. And it was in a very nice, cordial way. It wasn't in a derogatory, like, I'm taking it from you. Again, it's on video. We do have his stream. It's very easy to see that he was being cordial and a little bit jealous is what I got out of it.
Right. So he was live streaming at the time, so obviously wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next.
So I can tell you that during that arrest, they caused damage to his arm and his shoulder, that he's permanently has numbing and some other permanent injuries from the arrest itself. Something he was reminding me of this morning when I spoke to him, because the men do call me. And yeah, he reminded me this morning that he still has numbing in his fingers from that arrest. And one day, maybe we'll be able to address that in the future. But unfortunately, yes, he was arrested and taken away. 50 minutes later, Tony was also live streaming. Well, not live streaming. He was recording and then he was uploading. So the last video we have from him was just a couple minutes before he was arrested. And he was actually filming the police officers and talking nice about them, suggesting maybe they put their weapons down and let's all kind of hug and make up type of thing. And then he was arrested at 9:50 at February 13th. Now, I do want to let you know that news got out pretty quick that they got arrested. So it's my understanding that Tony knew that Chris was arrested. And did Tony go running away to hide and go get the group? No, he stood around continuing his live stream because that's what he was there to do. So even with the knowledge of Chris Lysak being picked up, Tony stayed, walked around, talking to people and filming. And then they picked him up at 9:50, and he was arrested on mischief. So they took him away for mischief. At February 14th at 12:30 in the morning, Chris Carbert, sorry, I get that name sometimes. He was sleeping in the trailer at the Joanne's location. And again, I want to emphasize, Chris Carbert and Chris Lysak are best friends. And Chris Carbert knew that Chris Lysak was arrested earlier that night. And again, what did he do? Did he run and go hide and anything like that? No. He fell asleep because he wasn't feeling good. That's why he wasn't down at the protest itself, because he wasn't feeling good that night. So he went to sleep. And then he got arrested at 12:30 in the morning. And the next gentleman that got picked up would be Jerry Morin. So 3 hours outside of Coutts near Calgary on his way to work around noon, they pulled him over on Highway 22 or 20, something like that, and arrested him for mischief as well at that time. It was subsequent to that all four men were then charged with conspiracy to commit murder. And at the same time, by the way, I just want to kind of emphasize, because February 14th, if people don't remember, is when the Emergencies Act was invoked. So at the time that it was being invoked, they were being charged like all at the same time. So when the Prime Minister was up there talking about this nationwide national security armed force, we weren't even being charged yet. The people here weren't even being charged yet for that. So the narrative and how the information came out is very interesting, because the Prime Minister had his speech ready, the EA was invoked, and it takes a couple of days to invoke the EA. So all of that was ready to go, but nobody was charged yet. Kind of interesting, the timeline on all that.
Wow. Okay. And so, you know, what were the charges or evidence, or what were they saying about these four gentlemen that put them there and had them staying there?
Right. So the information we got is on February 9th is the first time they got wind of anybody talking about anything. And this is according to the police. I want to emphasize that what I'm telling you here is what we got from the Crown side, because the defense, of course, has a different version of this. But I want to just talk to what the narrative was.
Yeah.
And that was on February 9th that there was this group coming together. And I believe it was February 9th where they say they picked up the guns, a bag of guns. Now, we've all seen that table of guns. I just want to remind everybody that there's 15 guns on that table, but only 6 guns are attributed to the men in jail right now. The other 9 are for somebody else.
So that was put in the media, this huge table of guns. You know, I wish I'd pulled that picture up. Shoot.
I think everybody knows it by now, but yeah.
Yeah. And now you're saying, you know, why would they show this massive table of guns when only 6 of them belong to these 4 guys?
Well, at the beginning, there was 13 or 14 people arrested. But since then, only 4 have gone ahead with these charges, and these are only 4 left involved in all that right now. Okay.
And you talked to Viva Frei about this. Only 1 gun was not allowed. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so there's 3 guns on there that we'll call have issues. Okay, so the 2 handguns, those are restricted. You need to have a restricted PAL license to have those. And they have to be stored and locked away under key. So there's questions around that. We do understand that the 4 men involved, amongst them, only one of those handguns was attributed to the men. The other handgun was attributed to someone else. We don't even know the name of that person. Another weapon on the
You guys all
table.
have their PAL license, like to have.
Yeah, there's no question. There's no
Okay.
problems with PALs right now because these are
Okay.
all farmers and local guys that had hunting guns. And then there's one weapon on the table we call gun number 8. It's the 8 from the left. And that's a prohibited one under the order in council that Trudeau dictated that we all had to, like, that's a law that he just created out thin there. But under that law, that particular gun is prohibited.
So it never used to be illegal.
Correct. It used to be restricted, but now it's prohibited.
These guys didn't go hand it back when it was time to hand it back, which I hate to say it, but Canadians all across the country, well, actually, I don't hate to say it, are saying if Trudeau gets too insane about this gun stuff, like, good luck coming for mine. I'm not running to return them. So these were a once legal gun that is now illegal. Fine. Okay. And it belonged to one person.
Correct. Well, we can't say belong to, it's attributed to them. So the allegations are it's theirs, but we can't confirm that. But most certainly. Now, what you said there was interesting. So when the order in council came out, it's actually confusing even to this day what the intent is. Is you going to go collect guns? Do people have to turn them in? That actually wasn't even addressed with that order in council. Because again, these aren't laws. They're not statutes. So frankly, it hasn't been well thought out. The OIC really just made a list of guns that they call prohibited now. So you can no longer sell them. You can no longer import them. You can no longer really do much with them. But they don't go around right now at this stage collecting them.
Oh, okay. Well, that'd be nice, in the news if they'd put that into context.
Yeah, I actually had to interview Tracy Wilson from the Canadian Coalition of Firearm Rights to find that out. Like, I had to interview her to find that kind of stuff out.
Wow. Okay. So you were telling me, I don't want to skip forward, but basically there was 2 female officers that infiltrated themselves into the protest, pretending to be super right wing. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so they from what I understand, they would come in and say things like, I'm a right winger and I love guns and it really, gets me excited and happy. I'm a redneck. I love the rednecks. It was this whole persona of really trying to very hard get into a particular group. Now, I do want to emphasize that we do have their written statements that they provided, what they said happened during these encounters with the men, but they were not wearing wires. So there's no recordings of anything that they were doing. And
what was it these ladies said in their statements?
Not much, to be honest, other than the impression that they thought that these guys could or would want to get violent, but they didn't have any specific ways to do it and no specific people to do it, no specific plans to do it. It was more like what I would call locker room talk when guys are trying to impress women, especially if the women are trying to entice that kind of conversation. So from the information we got from the, I can't call them informants, they're RCMP agents, it didn't appear that they actually had plans. There's a lot of grabbing and insinuating and trying to stitch things together. And I do want to highlight that the entire thing from them hinges on Dialog being a terrorist group, because it's all pointing to that group as really the root of it all. Because all of it is, they have a contact. It's a big contact. They're going to be able to do everything and take over this government. But again, they're referring to a non-existent group.
So, okay, so I did read that. Did they have like a Dialog patch or stickers or something where like, these guys are part of a terrorist group? Is that how did they link them to Dialog?
A whole bunch of ways, but I know Chris Lysak has one picture with Jeremy, and I've spoken to both men now. They don't know each other. So there was a barbecue, a bunch of gathering, and you know how you have the popular guy that everyone wants to take a picture? Yeah. That was that. Chris Carbert mentioned online that he liked the show, the Rage, I think, something like that. He liked Jeremy's show. And they commented about it.
Is that what it's called?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right. So now if you look at the Wikipedia article about these 2 incidences, they call these connections to leadership of Dialog. Even though all Chris Carbert did was mention it online, he never met him even for a photograph. And all Chris Lysak did was stood for a photograph in line with other people and said, thanks, something along those lines. Now, I've spoken to Jeremy and Chris about this. They don't know each other.
Yeah.
You couldn't ask each other what their middle name is. They don't know each other.
Well, if
And they
anybody's
never
been
did.
to a protest, you literally go somewhere and people, can I get a picture with you? Can I get a picture with you?
Yeah.
And you're barely remembering their name. And then if somebody big comes, depending if you like them or not, okay, here's a good example. Some people really like Chris Guy. And so let's say he shows up at an event, there'd be like moms taking pictures with him. Thanks for fighting for our freedom at the airport.
Right.
And that would be it. So,
Right. Like
there's people that have taken pictures with me and
those are all your best friends now. So if they do anything wrong, it's your
I
problem.
might do in the future that could, Okay, so these women.
So now let's go to the patches. So the patches, what was happening was during the event, there was a gentleman walking around handing out packages of patches. So each package had 2 patches in it, and just handing them out to anybody that wanted them. We can say we believe that those patches were not placed by the RCMP. They're not planted. I know there's a narrative around that out there. We don't believe that narrative. We do believe that one of the gentlemen owned it. And again, I just want to highlight, it's benign. There's nothing wrong with owning a black square with a white line in it. It represents nothing but a comedy group. So that's how they connected that one. And if you watch or read that Wikipedia article, they also said they found 2, so another set, with Tony during a raid of his place. At the end of the day, that's it. That's the complete connection to Diagolong, according to the disclosure. And they're pointing to that even still to this day as a reason why they should be denied bail.
Okay, now I want to say, like, I'm not trying to be biased here.
Sure,
but
please.
No. I'm saying for libs that are watching this. I don't think libs don't watch my show because I always win. But no, I'm just kidding. Anyway, okay, my husband is super like peaceful Zen guy. He has watched Jeremy and he thinks he's hilarious and he puts it in context. It's like a beard. He hasn't watched him in a long, long time, but back before all this happened, because I was like, who is this guy? And then my beau goes, he's kind of like a guy's guy where like dudes watch him and they drink beer together. And he kind of he's one of those hilarious guys at a pub. That's it.
Yeah.
And he goes,
he's got a personality.
Right. And I've watched it. And, he's been in the armed forces. He says how Canada's falling apart, how corrupt it is. He's allowed to do that. I do it every day. He's not wrong. And so if Norb was down at an event in Vancouver and Diagolong patches were being given out, he would grab one because it's almost like a token of a hilarious podcast. So,
and that's why it was being handed out too.
Right. So in other words, my husband would have one sitting there. I mean, we all know, if you guys, the Diagolong story, it's actually like you can go watch originally. If maybe he's had to take them down, tell me. I watched, my friend Kyle, because I said, I want to know more. What I don't understand this Diagolong thing. And Kyle said, okay, I'm going to send you links to some of the shows where he first came up with the idea. And it was a joke. And I'm like, are you serious? This is what do they not understand podcasters and humor? So he's like, yeah, this is Diagolong. I'm like, that is so embarrassing. So yeah. Okay. So now they think that these guys are part of Jeremy's overthrowing the government. But okay, here's my question. Did these female police officers that pretended to be right wing, were they flirty? Don't know. I feel like this is entrapment.
The answer is yes.
Okay. I'm not saying
they targeted the single men of the group. Okay,
so they went after the single men. You guys are so great. I'm right wing. That to me is entrapment, but I'm not saying it is. I think I did it. Okay. Well, anyways,
and here's our challenge on that one, Odessa. It would be easier for the defense to show entrapment if there's a recording, so we can hear what was said. We don't have that. They didn't provide that. Maybe it doesn't exist, but we certainly don't have it. So we can't even really pursue this entrapment narrative either because we don't even know what was said by them. And that's part of entrapment. So whether or not they were entrapped could be a very difficult thing to pursue as well because we don't hear what was said. Same story, though, on the prosecution of these gentlemen. Because we don't know what was really said, we're going by their testimonies and their affidavits, which contradict each other in many ways, by the way.
Can you talk about that or okay?
Can't, because they're talking about specific details that we're not allowed to go into. But I'll just say hypothetically, if they said we met at 5 o'clock, it was really 7 o'clock according to another one, and the real time was like 6. Those kind of errors, and really stretching the truth a lot. I can talk about one item because the picture has been released. So on the back of Tony's truck seat for his vehicle, he had an organizer for his kids in the back, where they can put their stuff when they're sitting in the back seat. Have you ever seen some of those organizers on the back of the seat?
Mm-hmm.
The women described that as bulletproof and body armor. Yes. So that was being used as part of, these guys even had armor in their vehicles, according to them. But it was a CD organizer for kids in the back seat.
Oh my gosh.
So that's what I mean by stretching the truth and then telling the judge, those kind of things. That's what was going on here.
You don't have to answer because I know neither of us feel like getting arrested right now. Do you think there's power from above saying, get these guys, find something?
50% of the cabinet is penetrated. You mean that far? Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, and I want to say something as well. And in Canada these days, we actually have to be careful with this. So I'm going to compare this to what I see every day on Twitter, Facebook, Telegram, BitChute, Rumble, podcasts. I literally will do a post, and once in a while, there will be a comment from someone that says something like, hang Trudeau.
Right. The instigators.
We can't wait till Nuremberg 2.0.
Right.
If that guy knocked on my door, he'd have another thing coming. This is talk every day on social media. Now, me as a podcaster, I don't say it, and I make an effort, or I've made a clear decision because I've seen what they're doing to podcasters to not like those comments. I just leave them.
I know what you mean, and
Okay,
sometimes I want to.
But so they would need to arrest, honestly, a lot of people who are just like, I hope this, I hope he takes my 100 boosters. I want to see this guy burn. But that is just people's feelings. They're not actually going out and doing it. So, to put these guys at the protest who, our children are being attacked by forced mandates of this. And so the fury of the kids being an experiment is verbalized. I've been to parties where people are hammered and they're like, oh, what I'd like to do to Bonnie Henry and stuff. But they're just like moms that go back to their work every day. So these things are said, but if it's not in context, it's. Well,
let me give you a couple more examples of the ridiculousness of this. So Tony's farm, which is generational, so at least his grandfather was there, this much we know, was raided. They completely combed through the whole thing, and he was really decent sized property. They found what was called, well, by them it was called pipe bombs, but in actuality what they were was his grandfather used to drill mines. So he used to have some dynamite to get through some rock. And not even dynamite. They would create these little things for it. It was 50 years old, no longer worked. You couldn't even make the thing blow up if you wanted to. It was found way in the back in a corner somewhere on the farm and was lost and forgotten about for decades. That's what they're telling the press was pipe bombs made by him.
I'm shaking my head because Wikipedia went on about these pipe bombs too.
He didn't even make them. These was his grandfather's. These were ancient back in they're not even workable. It's all old. It doesn't work. And that's one example. Another example unfortunately for Tony, is they did some gravel mining. So they would dig out some gravel for gravel, and they called those foxholes that he was setting up and trying to get the government if they tried to get him. No, these are not foxholes. They're just holes and they're not even deep. They're just like waist level deep. So they wouldn't even be effective if they're foxholes. But that's an example of what's being said. So they will take a hole in the ground and call it a foxhole for a defense to defend against the Canadian Army. That's the kind of stretching they're doing here.
And you are on the inside. You're speaking with these guys, or at least you were, and their family members. So they're telling you this is so ridiculous. Like, they're telling you the true side of, I mean, if you go to Alberta and raid a house, especially farmers' houses, you're going to find a lot of stuff to do with arms and animals. Right. And so they had to raid the homes to find things. Is that what happened?
Yeah, and they didn't find much. They reclassified an old explosive device as a pipe bomb. Like, they didn't find much at all. And I do want to kind of just correct something quickly there. The men we don't talk about the incident. We leave that with the defense. So when I do talk to the men, like even Chris Lysak called me just before this, we try to keep it on to like, how are you doing, and tell me about your days type of stuff, because I don't want to cause them any complications. And they're also still very confused. Like, time has paused for them for a year and a half. Like, they really don't even know what's going on outside here for us. So we're very careful about that. I do meet with the family. So we had dinner with a whole bunch of them yesterday. And again, there we don't talk about it either, other than who are these men? Where do they come from? What kind of guys are there? And I'll tell you, no criminal records for three of them. And minor juvenile record for one of them that's long since gone. That's it. That's what we're talking about with these gentlemen. They were good guys. They are good guys. They still are.
They had businesses or full-time jobs. Tell me about that.
Yeah, Chris Carbert had a landscaping business in Lethbridge, award-winning. He did very well. So he had a very successful business before he got picked up. Chris Lysak was an electrician, and he was working on his master's electrician at the time. In fact, today he was asking me if I think they'll let him continue that course or if he has to repay for it. Like, he was halfway through the course, so he didn't know what, like, that's the kind of stuff we talk about. Like, what are you going to do with that course type of stuff? So his concern today was whether or not he can continue his master's for electrician. Jerry was a linesman. So he's the guy that goes up to the power lines and does all the work up there. Very dangerous stuff. And then Tony was a heavy equipment operator. So excavators and stuff like that.
Okay.
So family men too.
Yeah. Okay, so I do want to get into the horror they're living through in this institution before we get into what is going on with the case now. Like, what do you want to tell us? How can we share this? How can we help? So these guys have been in there for a year and a half, and tell me about their daily life in, well, they're in their own cell, right?
Yeah, so we'll start from the top to the bottom on most severe. So Jerry's in Calgary, which has been defined by all the men as the worst one to be in. In fact, the rating, if you ask the men, is Calgary, then Lethbridge, then Medicine Hat. So apparently Medicine Hat is a little bit nicer than the others. Jerry's in Calgary. He's in the maximum security area with all the gangbangers and heavy criminals. And he's in solitary confinement 22 hours of the day. He gets out 2 hours of the day. Lucky for Jerry, though, this last week, he was able to volunteer for some cleaning duties, which allowed him to be out for 2 more hours of the day. So he was able to get 4 hours out. Jerry has shared some pretty sad stories. So just recently, we did a Friends and Family episode. So if your viewers want to go check out my podcast on Friday, we have the Friends and Family over to talk. And what we did was Jerry, Chris, Tony, and Chris sent in a message to Canada for us to read out loud. And Jerry shared with us how he was happy that he was able to watch a sunlight come into his wall and for 30 minutes watch it go across, because he doesn't get to see it that often. Tony provided us a story about looking outside to see a magpie feeding its young. Tony has gotten very religious. There's a prayer from Tony that he's shared with us. He's certainly found faith. So he was explaining to us how the beauty of God was being witnessed there by the feeding and of the offspring. And this is how he was spending his time. And then we also have Chris Carbert, who named a grasshopper. He named a grasshopper because it was his buddy. This is happening right now.
So that's the highlight of his day.
Highlight of his day. Yeah, Chris Carbert.
Sorry, I just to think that they're in this cage for a year and a half.
Yes. Jerry explained to me yesterday how he's happy to be in Lethbridge because they get full portions and the food has flavor.
Okay, let me pull it together.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry, but I'm going to bring you some hope, though. Okay. So it looks like the Crown and the truth is coming out. So February 12th is when they went back to court to continue the trial. The Crown provided a bunch of disclosure, and they kind of messed up and they're playing games. They're leaving things to the last minute, 3,000, 4,000 pages. The defense had requested some documents that seemed to be missing. In a haste, because the judge was not impressed with the Crown provided some documents to the defense. but they didn't redact some stuff that they wanted to redact. So the Crown was able to identify some information that is incredibly valuable. That information got packaged up together and got put into an application to the court called a CC1. This is an application in criminal court to do something. We are not privy to the information because it's under seal right now. On June 29th, when court started, the lead Crown attorney, his name is Steve Johnson, was not there. Steve Johnson, sorry, was not there. And neither was the second in command. Neither one of them were there. The defense then let everybody know that the CC1 application is the reason why the Crown's not there. The reason is because the information found has caused the defense to refer to Steve Johnson as a witness in this matter now and a possible defendant in this matter now. On an application called a recusal application, which is something the defense can do to ask the judge to step down or the Crown to step down, this application was filed and put forth in the court to have Steve Johnson and the second in command be recused. On consent, which means the Crown agreed to it, he's been recused. So those two gentlemen are no longer a part of the court case. And whatever is in that envelope, we're going to find out tomorrow what the outcome of that is. The Law Society of Alberta is now involved, and they get involved with misconduct or gross misconduct for lawyers. And the RCMP have been told to lawyer up so that they can see what's inside that package. My understanding is that information is damning.
Okay, that's great to hear.
So I'll take you out of that because yes, and I also want to just say something with Odessa. It is beauty that they're finding. So when they're doing this stuff with the grass, they're looking for beauty and they love it. So if we look at it that way, it might be a little bit more to understand. And I also want to emphasize that two of the men have found faith. Chris Carbert is talking about becoming a pastor. He leads a Bible study in there. He's also got the record for the longest Bible study because you're not supposed to be in remand that long. So he actually holds the record for holding the longest Bible study consecutive days. And hopefully that record's never broken because we do not want to see this kind of thing happen again to anybody else.
It's the grasshopper story, I swear to God.
Yeah, that bothered me too. But I've spoken to these gentlemen. Their spirits are staying high. But the biggest one is for Chris Lysak. He needs to be with his daughters. He definitely needs to be with his daughters.
Okay, on the Viva Frei show, I was so glad you sent that to me because he's a lawyer. It was so great the two of you were together because you're a paralegal as well. We can talk about what led you to do that. But before I forget, tell me about other crimes that have happened prior to this or while they're in jail and how these people who actually did a crime were let on bail or they have an ankle bracelet. Tell me about those or some pedos. Like,
sure.
Let's compare here what's actually going on in Canada and why I feel these are political prisoners.
Yeah, for sure. So in Toronto, there's an accused cop killer out on bail right now. He's got an ankle bracelet, has some conditions, cannot have weapons. But there's a police officer who has died, and the accused is out on bail. In Winnipeg, during the protest, we had an Antifa guy intentionally drive over protesters. It's on video. We watched the whole thing. He got picked up immediately, and he was put on bail within 7 days. His conditions were ankle bracelet, bail, cash, and don't come back to Winnipeg.
Did something.
Yeah. That was, they actually hurt people, right? They drove over people on intent, like they meant to. That's a definition of crime. And these gentlemen in Alberta are accused of maybe conspiring, maybe with something that doesn't exist, but not a single hair on a single person got hurt. And 526 days still being denied bail. Now, I do want to emphasize that I don't blame the courts for the bail because they've been told quite the tale. The same tale that the Rouleau Commission or the Public Order Emergency Commission also pointed to uphold the use of the Emergencies Act. So you do have to understand that the contents of that information that we don't have because it's under seal, it's in camera, has to be so grand that judges in Alberta and Rouleau himself believed it as a national security threat. So based on that, it can't be upset with the judges because they're going with what they're told. However, because of the Public Order Emergency Commission, the government has already cleared themselves on these events. They've already provided a defense. But that information, after it came out of the POEC, for example, Jeremy McKenzie is not a leader of a terrorist group, has not made its way back to the Alberta court. That bothers me because we now know that the foundation of the allegations, which the RCMP shared with us in a press conference, are not true. They're completely fabricated. But yet that information hasn't quite made it to the judge yet.
Okay, can people not show that file and mail it to the judge at his work?
It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You wish it would. You wish you could just tweet it to the judge and inform them. It doesn't work that way. So two of the gentlemen had a bail review hearing happen recently. They spent tens of thousands of dollars to get it in front of the judge. And the likely was going to be based on this kind of information because we now have to revisit the foundation for the denial of bail. However, that judge decided that the original judge who denied the bail should be the one that sees it. They're not available, so come back another day was the answer. And that another day hasn't come yet, so they haven't had ability to sit in front of that judge. Now, my concern with that is I actually would prefer that a new judge takes a look at it. So take a look at it with a new, fresh pair of eyes of the information as it exists today. So remove the part that's no longer valid and then have a new assessment made. I believe under those conditions, they would receive bail. But right now, no, there's no judge that's reviewing their bail or approving it.
Sounds like our medical system. No one around.
There's some things messed up. Yeah, there's some things messed up for sure. Absolutely. But I got some other things that I can be excited about. I do believe that some local, there's so much I can't get into, but there's some local government actions that might be happening. It seems like the United Conservative Party isn't pleased with what's going on, but they have their own problems when it comes to Alberta legal. So very delicate situation. But there's a lot of people, not publicly, who are reaching out to us, talking to us, and seeing what can be done in the future. Because we never want to see another person held in remand that long. We never want to see bail denied without the public knowing. Everything being so secret has caused so much distrust with the system that we can only speculate on what's really back there. It would be best that we actually knew what was back there instead of speculating.
Do these guys have a legal fund? I mean, this must be costing an arm and a leg. Do they have somewhere people can donate?
Oh, see, with your friendship with Rebel, this is going to be a very uncomfortable conversation. Truckerlawyer.ca was set up for that. These men have not received any of that money yet. Now, again, with some more hope, we have unsubstantiated rumor and people providing us, the legal department, the legal team for the men, who claim that Ezra has contacted them very recently. I haven't got a confirmation of Ezra about that, but the Democracy Fund in Ezra has been talked about recently amongst the lawyers. I can't break that news more than that because Ezra and team are not confirming or denying that information we have. But it is a little bit hopeful because that information came from the lawyers themselves.
I learned something because I was on a weekend with Drea, and she works really hard. And she said, you know, people think that like we're just this place where we're all told what stories to do and what not. She said, no.
Yeah,
she says, what people don't understand is it's a whole bunch of independent journalists. And Ezra's given us free reign. And so he doesn't even know what we're covering. And then we submit it to him kind of thing. So she said, if I cover a story, it's because I wanted to cover a story. If someone else covers a story, and she says half the time, if someone says, have you covered this? She says, I don't know. I have to look through all the journalists and what they've covered in the last year because they don't talk every day. And she says, so that, you know, people think that we're this, you know, we go to these meetings every day and like, let's cover this, let's not. And she said, I get so many people saying, why didn't you cover this? And she's like, well, because this person just did last week. Like you have to go and look. So one thing I do want to say, because, you know, she gets attacked all the time, is they're not this like Fox News where you're allowed to say this. They go do their own stories and then that's it. So, and then Ezra gives them a lot of free reign. So if there's some kind of fund that didn't make it there, it's not like,
well, we can say maybe didn't make it there yet.
Yeah.
Right.
And you got to hear both sides. And, you know, she said that he's really a sweet guy and people attack him all the time.
Like everybody, I'm sure we have two sides.
Exactly. And I have never met him. But that's the thing is these guys get overloaded with, why aren't you covering this? And they'll say things like, because I'm doing these 6 other things. And I said, Drea, maybe you should cover this. And she's like, I think Coutts Four was covered by Rebel at some point, and she said, I've been covering BC. And so it's kind of like, it's not this like, let's not do this. It's that it's chaos out there. So I will send her this.
The
I will
Coutts
send
was
her
a little different. Yeah, the
Mhm.
Coutts, I think you're generally absolutely correct. And on most everything, that is exactly how Rebel does it. But the Coutts one, there was a lot of confusion around a media ban or publication ban and what all that meant. We do have an email from Ezra explaining to the family, because the family reached out to him asking him, why are you no longer covering? And he did point to a government ban at that point. A government media ban is actually what he wrote. So at that point, at least their understanding, they couldn't talk about this stuff. Fast forward to 20 days ago when we started looking at this, we got a copy of the decision, and it wasn't a media ban. It was a publication ban on certain items, but the rest of it was allowed to be talked about. So I'm going to give everybody the benefit of the doubt and say there was a lot of confusion around what the media ban meant. And it wasn't until we really took a good look at it, what it meant. It was put in place by the defense.
The government is suing Ezra left, right, and center in the way that they go after him for anything.
Oh, yeah. But it looks like he now understands, because they are now reporting on it. In the last week, there's been 4 or 5 articles, and Ezra has somebody going to the court this week, I understand. So now that veil has been lifted, and it looks like everybody's jumping on and taking a look at this now. So that's good news. I'm very happy about that.
Thanks to you, Jason. You've been very determined to get us all talking about this. And
well, I'm going to put credit to where it belongs, and that's going to be on Granny McKay and Danielle and the rest of the family, because they never gave up from day one. And when everybody, including me, wasn't paying attention, they continued to push this forward. So I do appreciate the fact that, yeah, maybe my show opened up a couple doors and a couple people responded to me in my DMs and helped out. But no, it's definitely Granny McKay and Danielle and Crystal and Jacqueline. Like the list goes on the people who really made this happen.
Okay, 2 things I don't want to forget.
Sure.
Where can people literally go every day to watch the updates? But I also don't want to forget, aren't there any protests outside these jails?
The protests we're trying to keep to a minimum, because we definitely do not want to show the judge or anybody involved in this that there's discourse. But yes, we're going to be meeting at the court today. 2 o'clock, there's a small little court session, but mainly we'll be meeting tomorrow about 8 a.m. around the court. Wear white shirts. We're not doing a protest. There's no speakers. It's not a convoy. Do not parade your vehicles. Just show up with your hearts and a white shirt. To show the judge that there's a community that is not afraid of these gentlemen and are happy to take them in, because this is really what we want to demonstrate to the judge when he's coming in. Because if he has to think about bail and he needs to understand whether or not the community supports these gentlemen, we want that message to be loud and clear, that the community is not afraid of these gentlemen. There's no reason to lock us up or them up. Let them out. So yes, people are going to be showing up tomorrow, the 25th, the Lethbridge Courthouse, wearing all white. Remember, no protest. There's no jeering. We're not there to fight about anything. The process is happening. We have faith that the good things are happening now, especially with the recusal of the Crown and the lawyering up of the RCMP. So we would like to see this process continue unabated and make sure that there's no other complications that happen in the coming days.
What time was that at again?
8 a.m. will be there. Court, I believe, starts at 10.
Okay. Guys, please be there. Please.
Yeah, you can join us. And then you can join me at 6 a.m. So every day, 6 a.m. Mountain Time, 8 a.m. Eastern, and it'll be 5 a.m. for you. We'll be talking about this throughout this week. So tomorrow we have some more gun experts to come back on to clarify everything around the gun. So we're spending a lot of time educating people on the true evidence and what it means. For example, people say there's body armor in that picture. There's not. Those are legal vests, things like that. There's birdshot in there. There's bear spray in there. So we go over that kind of information. On Wednesday, we're going to have Jacqueline herself, the wife of Jerry, on. Now, Jacqueline's a very interesting story because she too was charged, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there. They were considering her a terrorist as well. So we're going to get into her story and how those things have gone away and the troubles that it caused for her life as well. It's because Jacqueline it's a story within the story. So we'll be talking to her on Wednesday about that one. On Thursday, we have an organization from the UK joining us, and they're about innocent prisoners and working at habeas corpus and other types of things to help free people. So we can't get a lot of help in Canada, so we've reached out to the UK, to an international body, to assist with that. So they're going to be on Thursday to kind of explain some of this stuff.
You're amazing, Jason. You've been so committed to this. Where can people watch your shows, tweets? Please let them know, because people want to know.
All right. So I'm on all platforms as Jason Lavigne MP. So MP stands for Member of Parliament, because I am running for office. So I do intend to go in there and do some accountability when that time comes. Until then, I'm going to continue helping my community get some justice here as well. I'm on YouTube, Rumble. If you want to see everything, go to Rumble, because I am suspended and I do have to limit what I put on YouTube.
But what are you under? Like, are you under Jason Lavigne?
Jason Lavigne MP everywhere.
Okay.
So everywhere I'm that.
Okay.
Yeah. And you'll find me on Twitter that way. You get her. I'm on Facebook on the same thing. So everywhere you'll find me that way.
Okay. So guys, you got to tune into these shows. And if you live, within 10 hours driving or more.
We have people coming from Saskatoon area. There's people coming from Ontario. Yes, people come from all over. I have a viewer
saying I'm on my way there right now.
I'd love to meet them. So make sure they come and shake my hand.
Okay. Yeah, Jason's awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
And I just want to quickly ask, you recently became a paralegal. What led you to that? Uh-oh, he's freezing. Oh, there we go.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Paralegal. That could be CSIS. Ever since I did my Jeremy McKenzie interview, weird things happen around me now. But in all seriousness, I was an entrepreneur. So in Eastern Ontario, around the GTA area, I'm a coding guy. I'm a technology guy. And I'm an entrepreneur. So I helped build several companies out there. One of them, maybe some of your people know, is Ticket Break. So we took on Ticketmaster for quite some time. Anyways, so that's my first career as a technologist. We sold the business. But when you become mildly successful, you get a lot of interesting people that pop out and come after you. You get lawsuits, frivolous ones, vexatious ones, completely fabricated ones. This does happen. So I decided to go to law school and get myself a degree. In Ontario, they actually license paralegals. So it's not like an assistant. In Ontario, it's a licensed paralegal, which means you got to go through law school. It's a 2-year course. So half of what a lawyer does. We can do the minor stuff. So the summary convictions for criminal court. We can do small claims court. We can do traffic. We can do that stuff. But we can't do the indictable, the murders and stuff like that. But in Ontario, it's a licensed position. So I managed to double up the course, get it done in a year. And then I passed the exam on my 40th birthday. And continued on with learning the law and practicing the law for a bit. And I really did that for the education, and thank goodness, because it served me well in the second half of my career here.
Well, that's just awesome. So please share this everywhere. Now, is there anything I haven't asked you that's super important that you needed to get to and I've just forgotten here?
Well, I would say my book. So
yes, your book. Yes.
Yeah, so I've been sitting back with some friends in church, and we sit back and we try and talk about how do we really make an impact. And we're not the throw stones type of people. We're more meek, like the biblical version of meek. We really want to make change and be strong, but do it in such a way that it's more acceptable. So I noodled this one for a while, and I was thinking, well, what are we missing in society? Like, how are we trending so viciously in the wrong direction? And I started to think that, well, witnessing. So witnessing is something we don't do a lot of anymore. In fact, culturally, we actually make it seem like it's not a good thing, because witnesses will get stitches if you talk and stuff like that. So we actually have a bit of a culture that doesn't encourage witnessing. And a lot of people don't know how to do it well or right, so that you could become a credible witness and take things to court and take things to the press and take things for legal lawsuits. So that's what my book is about. So my book's called Bearing Witness.
Okay.
And it's the ethical, legal, and practical guide to recording and sharing history. It did reach #1 on Amazon in the legal section. And
wow.
What it will teach you to do is how to use your phone, use your eyes, use your ears. Don't become part of the problem. You just want to witness it. Because historically, witnesses are historians, are biographers, and they're the ones that are journalists. They're the ones that are there to write and capture history. So my intent here is to help people be more comfortable becoming witnesses, because I would like to kind of see things like Storytime Hour, have a couple witnesses there, and maybe the press says we ban witnesses from events now. Like, if they ever say that, I think that will really change a lot of people's opinion on what's going on, especially if witnesses are not welcome in certain things like that include children. So my idea here is to empower people to become confident, strong, and effective witnesses. And that's basically what the book is about.
You know what might be a good idea? I've talked to parents and saying, why are people not going into these drag queen shows
That's my
and
idea.
stuff?
Yeah, take
And
up a
most,
space.
I'll tell you, because I've seen this. I was at a protest where this happened. You have to have a child with you. Well, yeah, because I don't want
Mhm.
weirdos coming. So they're like, I'm not bringing my child there. But if somebody had like a really young baby where they don't have a clue what's going on, where it's not going to affect them mentally. We need parents like that to go in with just like a 1-year-old who won't even notice what's going on, so they can get in and start taping these things because
Well, that would be more undercover, right? That'd be kind of more discreet.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, this is more in your face. Like, I actually want people to
okay,
say witness on them, and I want them to be the presence to be known as a witness, because either they're going to allow them to be there and nothing happens, which ideally is a good thing. Like, if the story is Goldilocks and the Three Bears and there's nothing really bad,
Mhm.
but that's not what we suspect is happening. Because we do think that if you did identify yourself as a witness, you have a right to be there. Journalism, this is media, this is part of that branch of democracy, so you actually do have a right to be there, and I do cover that part of my book. We actually have laws that allow this. So if they try to ban or exclude you, I think that sends a nice message to the community that, yeah, we don't want legal witnesses here.
Mhm.
Well, I guess we can now talk about why that would be.
Mhm.
And that's just one example, but I think it's just in history, and when you're out in the parades, or you're just out in general, being prepared to be a good witness to things, I think is just a good skill to have.
One thing I noticed that they did was with the storytime hours, the media be like, it's just telling stories, and a little dance at the end. Oh,
Yeah, no,
okay. So you have a dude dancing around in front of children at the end. What is the point? But I know you have to fly because you're going to do something important right
yeah,
now.
I'm headed to court right now, 2 o'clock, so
Okay.
my time. So that's 50 minutes from now. I have to make my way
Okay.
to the court.
Okay. Please come back if you ever want to update. I'm here. You can, you know, um, make sure on Twitter that I'm kept updated about this. And guys, go follow Jason Lavigne at all the places he said. Jason Lavigne MP, Rumble, Twitter, Facebook, all over the place.
Yeah, all of them.
In worst case, email me and I'll get him to give me all the links.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for trying to bring this to a larger audience. We really do appreciate it. Every click, every share, every eyeball counts on this one.
For sure. Thanks for what you're doing, Jason.
My pleasure, Odessa. And I'd like
Okay.
to speak to you again another time. That sounds great.
Okay. Okay. See you later.
Bye.
So, those of you that are new to my show here, you can also follow me at librti.com/Odessa. I'm also on Twitter at Odessa Orlewicz. I'm on Rumble under Liberty Talk Canada. In fact, if you go to the description, you will see all the places that you can watch my show, because this is the kind of thing I do every day on my show. Is I out corruption, I out craziness that's happening, I out mainstream media's lies. So I'm a friend of Jason's. Jason's a friend of mine. I would love to have people watch my show, and my viewers go to Jason, because I don't think there's anyone else that's following this story as closely and as properly and with a paralegal background as Jason. And Jason, thank you for getting the word out. We really appreciate it. The viewers really loved this show, and I appreciate all of you. Have a great week. Show up for these guys. Get the word out. Something's very wrong in Canada right now that has happened to these precious beings, these fathers, these brothers, these sons. This is not okay. And we need a brighter day here in Canada. So thank you guys very much for tuning in. Make sure to share everywhere possible. And like I always say, you can rip off this episode. You can take clips, put it in your own show, take me out. Doesn't matter. I want people to get as many details as they need for their shows. Don't bother to ask me if you can do that. Just go do it. Thank you so much, guys. Have a really nice week.